Hello and welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle for our recap of the Pans and Polaris that happened last weekend and our preview of the ADCC West Coast Trials that are going to be happening this weekend. We're recording slightly later than usual. Calum, do you want to explain why?
Was a busy and fatigued boy after coming back from holiday and submitting my thesis, and I had a nice big nap yesterday, so kept Ross waiting on the podcast, so we're doing it today instead. But we're here now, it's all that matters.
Big day for Calum, handed in his dissertation. So now that that's out of the way, full concentration on grappling. Before we get started, I always forget this. You need to like and subscribe and follow and tell your friends and share and help get the word of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle out there. Now that we are a few days past a big weekend of grappling, we'll focus on the two big events that happened, and we will try and talk about the big lessons that we took from each event rather than doing a play-by-play of all the action. So, first one we'll talk about is the Polaris Grand Prix, happened in the UK, and the centerpiece of it was a welterweight Grand Prix featuring 8 athletes, won by PJ Barch. Don't think it was any surprise that PJ came out on top. We'd flagged him before as the most likely to win based upon his credentials, being a former ADCC 4th placed competitor in the finals, having extremely good wrestling, being very difficult to score on, and being very experienced in no-gi grappling. So PJ came out on top, beating Levi Jones-Leary in the final. Calum, what were your big takeaways from watching Polaris?
Yeah, so from PJ, I think the wrestling was a big advantage in that, especially in rule sets with points and where you need to establish a good connection before you pull. That was his kind of route to victory against Levi. I think he said after the match, he was kind of coasting. So basically, took Levi down from the feet twice. Managed to blast right through Levi's frames and get a couple blast doubles to get up by 2 points. I think he said after his match that he was somewhat coasting after that. I think it was 20 odd grand in the line, so fair enough wanting to do that. I think if he had got those points on the board early, he might have put more of an effort into passing, but it wasn't even really needed because he got the advantage early on. So I think takeaways from that is getting your early scores on the board, and like we spoke about before with Kynan and that, just being able to coast the rest of the match makes it very difficult if you're kind of in that gear of just coasting, making sure nothing bad happens, and then just cruising through the rest of the match. It makes it very difficult for your opponent to actually get anything going, because especially with a game like Levi that kind of requires people to come in and make these connections and play a bit of jiu-jitsu with him, it makes it very difficult for him to do that.
I think Polaris stated explicitly beforehand that if you're going to pull guard, you have to make a positive connection before you pull. So you can't just run, touch, and fall down. And I think Levi found it very difficult in the final to get a connection on PJ to be able to pull in a way that wasn't going to allow PJ to then shoot on him with a double leg. And I think as Levi was trying to work that out early doors as to how he would connect to PJ, PJ just took full advantage of it and took him down right away. So I think it shows the importance that even if you're a guard puller, you have to develop some comfort on your feet and some strategy for getting connection that you can sit down off.
Yeah, I think even just being comfortable enough on your feet to be able to hang in there for even just 20 seconds and finding an optimal opportunity to pull. Not only will that give you a better situation when you pull, you can maybe pull into a deeper guard rather than pulling into an open guard situation, but also it's not going to make you desperate to get the pull, and then that's going to lead into potential easy takedowns for your opponent. I think we've kind of discussed similar in a way to watching MMA. Those grapplers that also have a bit of striking, it makes their takedowns so much better you see guys like Khabib and Hamzat, like they are somewhat dangerous on the feet and they can strike a little bit, and that gives them the opportunity to get their takedown at a better time rather than like maybe someone like Ben Askren who's very bad at the stand-up relative to his competition, and that kind of forces him to like have to maybe take not the opportune time to go for his takedown. So I think just having somewhat a comfort on the feet will give you a big advantage in getting whatever you want to get out of that situation.
I think particularly after the first takedown, when it got back to the feet, Levi looked uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He didn't have any confidence in the way he was standing, and then that was just a green light to PJ to like push forward and get another takedown. So you've got to create, at the very least, some uncertainty in your opponent as to what you're going to do. Otherwise, there's no sort of force field of confidence that is going to prevent them from just surging forward and taking you down. I also think that we've seen in grappling that there are many creative ways to achieve bottom position. So you've seen in ADCC finals where penalty points are live from the start of the match, that people have given up their leg and then the other person has taken the takedown, and then there's been no score off that, but there's been no penalty point either. I think wrestlers are going to become wise to that. So if you give them their leg, they probably won't take it, put it back down, and then you have to go again. There's also ways that you can establish turtle position for 3 seconds and then sit to guard off that, and you won't concede a penalty point. But at the very least, you need to be adding some movement and strategy to your game so that you can safely get it to guard if it is guard that you want to play from. Can we touch on another thing that happened, which was Levi getting very close to back takes off Bolos, but not managing to score off it? And I know you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so in his first couple matches, he was able to get to the back against Shane and against Joseph, and it's really cool to see that. I don't really see it as often these days. Obviously, we see it quite a lot, like countering the leg locks and stuff, but proactively just going for like a traditional berimbolo game, don't really see it as much. So it's cool to see that for sure, but I think the issue coming up against a guy like PJ was it's very difficult to actually get the back if the guy's just willing to concede and go on bottom. How it works with bolos, and like an issue for guys that don't know, like my whole blue and purple belt competitive career, like berimbolos were like my A game, so it was always very insistent on like, oh, I need to always take the backs from this berimbolo, but you need to take the sweep when it's there, and actually it's really only if the guy's really trying to stay on top and not concede the sweep that the back becomes like the easiest option. You need to take the sweep when it's there, because if you're going for the berimbolo and the guy's just quite happy to sit on his butt and kind of like shoulder walk back and scoot away and all that, it becomes very hard to climb up the body and get the hips up and get that upper body connection to get the back. So you need to really be able to come up and sweep and hold the guy down. And obviously that's very difficult against PJ when he can just wrestle up out of a lot of these like scrambly situations. So I think that would be an adjustment that Levi would potentially have success with in the future against grapplers with the style of PJ.
Yeah. So great performance from Levi though. He managed to pick up a win against Joseph Chen, who you'd highlighted before the competition. He was the athlete that you were most looking forward to watch. What did you think about their match?
Levi and Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Obviously, Levi got the bolo relatively early on. I was considering whether Joseph getting out of that situation would result in Levi getting like one of those adrenaline dumps that you get in competition where you get to your best position and then maybe you've expended some energy getting there, expended some energy trying to finish, and then when the guy gets out and there's still like a decent amount of time left on the clock, it can be a bit demoralizing. But no, his guard retention after that looked really good. I think Levi's guard retention, just like lying flat on his back, is probably like a decent bit higher than anyone Joseph's went against so far. You could say Tommy is potentially an exception to that, but Joseph was able to kind of get upper body grips in his kind of tripod positions, which is where he passed against Tommy. But Levi's like very comfortable, just lying like dead flat on his back, just constantly pummeling his legs, framing well. So we saw Joseph attempting the outside passing quite a lot, but wasn't really having too much success with it against Joseph. So that'd be a cool match to see again in the future with the passing style of Joseph and the guard retention of Levi.
I thought Levi's frames were exceptional, so Joseph never got the chance to drop his head towards Levi's shoulder or past the shoulder. There was a couple of moments where he started getting some hip switches going from slightly further out, but Levi was able to turn with them and not allowed the guard pass. But I thought, in general, Levi had the better of the distance management, even though he was playing on bottom and Joseph was on top. But I'm sure those guys, being round about the same age and being young, are going to have many battles in the future. And if it's anything like the first one, that'll be great. Is there anything else from Polaris that you think is worth highlighting as a sort of big lesson to learn? The answer might be no.
Yeah, I think the match between Keith and Cappy was quite interesting.
Okay.
I found it quite interesting that Keith really wasn't engaging at all up until like the sequence that won in the match. Thought he would have maybe tried to pass a little bit more, but it was quite interesting how he just, and I think we're seeing this a little bit more in some of the no-gi matches with guys just completely staying out of the guard, either trying to run around the guard. In his case, he found an opportunity to jump on the arm and get the submission there. So found that quite interesting. Don't necessarily have any like big takeaway or lesson from that. I think a bit of an observation that that's becoming a little bit more of a thing, especially with the guys on top with the wrestling advantage that wouldn't mind their opponent standing back up. They're tending to kind of skirt around the outside and either opportunistically jumping on things or just like constantly circling around the guard. So I thought that match was interesting, but no real big takeaway from that.
So we had that match, and we also had a standalone match, Fionn Davis against Brianna St. Marie. Pretty convincing win for Fionn. Nearly got the submission right at the end of the match. Did you watch it? What did you think of Fionn's performance?
Yeah, watched it. Like, not a big surprise from Fionn. Like, just normal stuff for her to be doing, like super dominant. Wasn't sure if Brianna would have made any adjustments in the lead up to that match. I heard she's working with Dima now as well, so potentially we'll see some of that leading into ADCC, but it didn't do her too much good in this match. The similar dominant performance that we usually see from Fionn.
Yeah, I think Fionn is looking very strong heading into major championship season. Definitely going to be the one to beat in her divisions. So we also had the Pans this weekend, one of the IBJJF majors in the gi. There are loads of divisions and loads of competitors. So what we're going to try and do is zero in on a couple of major talking points coming out of it. Calum, what do you think is a major talking point that you would like to highlight coming out of the Pans?
I think one of the most interesting stories for like an athlete's performance in it was Mika's. So Mika won gold in his division, did really well, but he found himself in quite a tight ankle lock in his first match, and then preceding that continued to compete. I think in an interview afterwards he said he was considering pulling out, so must have been relatively bad for him to consider that. But he had both his ankles strapped up after that. Only injured the one, but he did the smart thing and taped up both of them so they weren't a target. But he altered, it's difficult to say, like, didn't play his A game because he's like so well rounded, but like not the typical game you would expect from him. He was kind of going right into over under passes, stuff like this to hide his ankles. And I think in his second match as well, he was trying to play a lot of like half guardy kind of positions and not have his legs exposed. So I think that just highlights the importance of having a well-rounded game and having stuff to fall back on, because you don't know what could happen in a match that could injure you in a way that affects your primary game. So it's good to have options that fall back on different attributes and things like this, so you can adjust your game plan if your A game is affected by an injury that you pick up in the match.
With Mika, always love seeing classic closed guard, arm drag, back to finish. For all Mika's ability to latch on to submissions out of nowhere, for all his ability to be creative and explosive with his movements, I do like the fact that he does favour pulling to close guard and working from there, and we keep seeing the strength of that position and strategy.
Is there another opening from a current athlete that like kind of predicts the rest of the match as much as Mika managing to jump to close guard? It's kind of, especially in the gi, it's pretty much a wrap in most circumstances.
That's a great question. It's one that I am going to have to ponder after this, and we can maybe revisit in future podcasts. But that is a good shout. Is Mika's close guard the most dominant sort of starting position or opening there is in jiu-jitsu? So in the final, he had a rematch with Andy Murasaki and immediately pulled close guard. And we were thinking before it, Andy was up for the rematch, coming out of the Euros that Mika won. And, we were thinking, what will we see? Will it be closer than last time? Andy's really good on top, but Mika just led the dance right from the off. And like I said, close guard, arm drag, back take.
Yeah, saw Andy like shaking his head, looking disappointed in himself after the match. And like, if you're just like right off the bat into someone's game, right off the bat, like arm across the back, like it would seem pretty frustrating being in that situation. But obviously that's a good job on Mika's part to just get the game into that straight away and keep it there.
Yeah. So let's just continue on the big points, but like circle back to something we just talked about at Polaris. And so that's the ability to come on top and hold top position, particularly if you're a lighter athlete. I think we saw that again from Taliesin at Roosterway, and he looks the best in that division at being on top. Not only is he all round probably the best in that division, I think there's a clear difference between him being on top and other competitors being on top. And in the final against Rodney Barboza, we saw Taliesin get to top. He didn't score the pass, but he was just unmovable. And I think that's going to be like a real difference maker at the lighter weights.
Yeah, it's so hard to actually get the pass in those sort of divisions. So come up from double pull or sweep and ride that 2 points or advantage for the rest of the match and do enough to stay busy, or even maybe rack up some advantages on top as well. I think that's definitely the way to go in those divisions.
Yeah. We saw another good performance from Diego Pato, who we'd highlighted before as being one to watch. Got the submission over Malachi in the final. I want to touch on, the reason I'm bringing that up is not to delve into like that match or that division. It's because people have been talking a lot about Mighty Mouse coming out of the event, and he did fantastically well. I think he's brown belt Masters 2. Yeah. He won his division and got silver in the absolute, and we've seen some footage of Mighty Mouse in the absolute beating people who are much bigger than him. And I just wanted to highlight that it's all fun and games when it goes well. But I watched Diego Pato in the absolute, and Diego Pato, like probably like on form, one of top 5 in the world right now. Okay, but it's all fun and games until you run into an absolute unit who's incredibly good. So Pato got Scooby. Scooby, I think, ultimately made it through the final against Gutenberg in the division. But basically, Scooby got to a Sao Paulo passing position, completely like pinned Pato to the floor, managed to power through to a half guard, and then from the half guard, I don't know if the choke was on, but there's just this moment where Pato ends up looking like his head turns towards the camera, and the amount of discomfort that he's in, he submits. And, we've all been, well, I don't know if everyone's been there, but I've been there against like absolute units on top of me when they get through. And if there's like a 50, 60 kilogram weight difference, it's just like, it's all fun moving around and playing, but like just getting pinned like that in an absolute is absolutely brutal.
I think as well, like Mighty Mouse did amazing, as obviously Jiu-Jitsu is amazing, but surely like the best athlete to ever enter a Masters 2 IBJJF competition. Like he's still like world class in MMA. I think he's still the world champion in one, and like could tell the way he was moving even against this bigger guy, like obviously way higher level of athlete, even if he was significantly smaller as well. But regardless, really cool to see him jumping in these kind of competitions.
Yeah, he did really well, and there's definitely some highlights that are worth looking out for on Instagram, etc., of him in action. But I just wanted to highlight that I didn't see anyone posting the other side of the coin, which was Pato getting pinned and, you know, dominated by an absolute unit. So that's definitely a lesson to consider if you're entering the absolute on the back of watching Mighty Mouse. Moving on, lightweight, amazing performance from Jackson the Guy, and I just want to float the idea that we'll revisit in a future podcast. Who are the best brothers in grappling right now? So Jackson, and then who just won the Pans, and then Sam, who won the Worlds last year. So on form, they're potentially the best brother duo in grappling. We're not going to delve into it too much just now, but like I said, we're looking for sort of big talking points coming out of the Pans, and that's going to be one to dive into. Another athlete I want to mention is Anderson Ferreira, because I think this was like, although people who watch a lot of grappling will have known of him and will have seen plenty of highlights of him, I think this was a bit of a breakout performance from him, winning his first ever major at black belt. And I know he's someone who you've watched in the past, Calum.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on Anderson and talk about like how much of a threat he could potentially be going forward?
Yeah, I think he's had the like talent and athletic ability to win these kind of divisions for a while. We've just not seen it at some of the majors. I think I don't know if I've spoken about this in the podcast before, but there was a IBJJF London Open that could have easily been like a world's division. Had Faris from Hodger Gracie's, had Tarek Hopscotch from Norway, and had the world champion from middleweight last year, Jansen Gomez, and Jiu Anderson, and Jiu Anderson won that division. So, you know, winning a division like that with those kind of people in it just shows already he's at that level, and he's had some really like highlight reel finishes against some top guys. I think things he was just needing to get used to was like the strategy and like the pace in some of these kind of matches. I think some of the veterans in these divisions just had a certain way of dealing with him and like slowing down the pace of the matches a little bit. So now making these adjustments and kind of getting comfortable in these black belt divisions, I definitely think he's going to be a big contender to win the whole thing at the World Championships in the gi.
I said we weren't going to mention every division, but we pretty much almost have. So heavyweight, Felipe Andrew came out on top. We didn't get to see a rematch of Felipe against Adam Verdzinski that I thought we might do. That's been a sort of battle over a couple of recent tournaments that they've been in. But I thought, really enjoyed watching Felipe's sort of Lasso De La Riva sweep game. So if you're looking for some good guard action from a bigger guy, he's definitely one to watch. And then there's a point I want to touch on in the ultra heavy division, which was Gutenberg Pereira losing in the final to Yatan because he was penalized for a reap, essentially. He just went over the center line. The referee called the penalty and pulled it back. But what I will say is that the referee went and had a good look a couple of times, and he sort of moved the jacket, let it go, moved the jacket, let it go. And to me, watching on, I know it's different when you're an athlete and you're in the moment, but to me, watching on, I was like, oh, alarm bells are ringing here. Like, the referee is definitely looking hard at whether he's going to call a reap. And we've talked before about Calum. He made it to the final of Nogi Euros at Purple Belt. And I think harshly got penalised and ultimately DQ'd in the final. And there was no sign from the ref that was going to happen. It was just all of a sudden, I think the ref saw your foot in a position that I think your opponent moved your foot into that position anyway, not necessarily deliberately, but just in the course of the action. So there was no warning sign, but I think like if you're an athlete and the ref like zooming in and out and he seems to be getting very intent on a certain thing that's happening, you should be reading that situation and making some adjustments. But Gutenberg didn't seem to react to it at all, and ultimately lost the match because of it. Only other one that we didn't touch on was super heavy, because it was closed out with Anderson and Eric Muniz. Anderson took the gold this time, I think. Eric took silver. Another one in the contenders for best brothers, although there is a third Muniz. So maybe they'll take the title just on strength of numbers. But we will revisit that topic in the near future. Now,
let's not include the Gracies if we're going on strength of numbers then.
Now, in the women's division, the first 4 finals, I believe, were all won by athletes from Art of Jiu-Jitsu. So does that lend itself to the argument that Art of Jiu-Jitsu is currently the best team in Jiu-Jitsu? What do you think, Calum? Is that like a statement that we could make, or are there other contenders?
I think like per size of the gym, pound for pound, if you will, in the gi, I think like definitely like for this size. I know they've just opened their second gym now. I don't know if that's like 2 serious competition gyms or the other one's more of like a just another hobbyist gym. I'm not really sure what the situation of that is, but for just the one like relatively small gym in Costa Mesa, the success they're having in the gi divisions for female and male black belt and color belt is quite ridiculous. As far as jiu-jitsu overall, we're obviously seeing some good success for those guys moving over into the no-gi. Definitely would probably consider them to be the best team in jiu-jitsu if they had some good performances in the ADCC coming up. But definitely, I think it's probably between New Wave themselves, AOJ, and Melky Gabel's team, I would probably say were the 3. If you're going off of like for just one gym, obviously you've got teams like Alliance and so on that are got like several gyms with a bunch of super world class athletes. But for just a single gym location, probably put Atos in there as well. But yeah, definitely up there in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's like an important difference that you highlight, as like whether it's one gym or whether it's a bunch of gyms that unite under one brand for competition. So one that's definitely worth exploring again in the future. So these ideas that we're highlighting, like who are the best brothers in jiu-jitsu, who's the best team currently, like get in touch with us and let us know your thoughts, and then we'll be able to discuss them more in future. Talking about that, I'm going to give my opinion. I don't know whether you agree with me on this or not, but who is the most dominant athlete in jiu-jitsu just now? And I am going to argue that most people will say it's Gordon Ryan, and I don't think it is anymore. I think there's someone else who has taken that crown. And it was highlighted to me at the Pans. And I watch a lot of jiu-jitsu, but I didn't know just how dominant this person was. So I think the most dominant person in grappling at present is not Gordon Ryan. It is Gabi Pisania. And Gabi Pisania currently has a record of 119 wins in a row. And she has double golded weight and absolute at 11 tournaments now. And she looks...
Are they all IBJJF tournaments?
Pardon?
Is that 11 IBJJF major tournaments?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
I need to double check, but she's on an absolute tear, and she doesn't look beatable. And something else that adds weight to her claim is I went and had a look at the record, and she didn't start off like her run by at black belt by winning loads. Like, there were defeats along the way, and in her current run she has avenged those defeats multiple times. So there were people that beat her, and a few years later she's beaten them over and over again. So I think to have that record, to be beating people consistently that have beaten her before, to be winning with big points differentials, not all the time, like there's been some closer matches, but like a lot of the time, and by submission, I think she's undisputably the best. Just to throw Gordon's recent record into the mix, I believe, and it's not always the easiest in grappling to check these things, but I believe going into the Felipe Pena match, he was 52 wins, I think, in a row, and he's added 8 to that total, including the 50 win. So he's at 60 wins. So that's like half the total of Gabby. And I know Gordon's a numbers guy and likes throwing out facts when he gets into discussion, but like the statistics show the dominance. And also Gabby's active. So I don't think you can lay claim to be the most dominant grappler in the world right now if you're not competing very often. So that's my case for Gabby. But you let me know if you think I'm wrong, or you let me know if you think I'm right. What do you think just with that idea being floated, Calum?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. Like you say, I was aware of her and aware of how like good she was, but when that statistic is given to you, it's quite shocking. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Need to look at the strength of schedule for both of them, obviously, and could maybe go in depth on that another time. But just purely off the numbers and that record, then yeah, you would have to argue that she is more dominant than Gordon.
That's a good phrase that I like, that we will definitely bring up again when discussing who's the most dominant athlete. Strength of schedule. Who have they beaten? And obviously it's relative to who they compete against, because, you know, you might be in a certain division at a certain time where there's certain athletes, but that does carries a huge amount of weight. It's like who you actually going up against and how did you do against them. So I think that covers a lot of the big talking points coming out of last weekend. This weekend coming, we have West Coast Trials in the USA. The last chance for a lot of people to qualify for the ADCC World Championships. Calum, can we try our best, right, to get through this discussion without mentioning 2 cliched phrases? And I'll mention once and only once, and then they shall never be spoken of again.
Punch their ticket.
Punch their ticket, number 1. Can you guess what the second one is?
No.
Stacked division. I'm forever hearing, this division is stacked. Yes, all divisions have a lot of very, very good competitors in them. Right? We've established that fact. And even if you do want to highlight that, let's get a different word. Find a thesaurus. Right? So we'll try our best not to mention that. We should have like a little klaxon or something that can go off if we do. So, over to the ADCC West Coast Trials. Let's do a quick run through. We'll be back after the West Coast Trials with our thoughts on how they went. Let's start under 66. Calum, who are the ones to watch in this division?
Yeah, so we have got a silver medalist from the ADCC World Championships. That was a few ADCCs back, so it's good that he's having to do the trials again, considering he's not had the most success since that at the Worlds. But we've got AJ Agsarm there. Felt like throwing him out first because he is the only one in this list that I can see that has medalled at ADCC. So not been on as good a form recently. He's obviously got a good skill set for ADCC, but that'll be interesting to see him in the mix anyway. A more recent trials winner, Keith Krikorian. I think he can do really well in this division. Got to the semi-finals last time. I think he did he have the match with? I think he had the match with Ethan for the third place and maybe lost. If I remember right. So yeah, he's definitely. Well, I think he won the East Coast for the last one and not the West Coast. So be interested in that. The guy that beat him in that last trials, Dominic Mejia. He's obviously kind of came onto the scene recently. Looked really good. The guy I'm most looking forward to seeing that I think has got a strong potential of winning, DeAndre Corby. So Dominic put out both the Corby brothers last time, but I've watched some matches of Dominic and DeAndre before that trials, and I think they had two. One of them was at an ADCC Open, and DeAndre beat him relatively convincingly, and then another one was at a sub-only show, and DeAndre just completely dominated him and submitted him. So if you kind of just watch the trials, you might think that Dominic's a lot better than the Corby brothers, or at least DeAndre, but I actually think DeAndre's a little bit better, so we'll see if he can avenge that loss in the trials this time. Some other notable names, again, some other ADCC veterans, Gio Martinez, again, on a little bit in age, so we'll see how he does in this division, but an interesting name nonetheless. And then Damian Anderson as well. And another one as well that DeAndre struggled to beat in the IBJJF scene a few times is Gianni Grippo. I do think this rule set favours him against Gianni a lot more than the IBJJF, just given that if there is no score, which has been the case in a few of their matches, it will get stood up in the overtime, and there will be that whole ADCC thing where he has to either accept the penalty, force a bottom position without getting the penalty, or he will get taken down. So yeah, that's my little rundown of the names that I'm quite interested in. What about you?
Well, I didn't have it on my list. I knew he was competing. I didn't have it on my list that you were going to throw out AJ first. I think as well, AJ's like moved about in weights over time, so I think it'll be interesting to see him like committing to 66, the smaller size, because he's plenty of experience competing against bigger guys and being bigger.
It became easier now with the day before weigh-ins as well, so he did do 66 last time, but I don't know, maybe he would have considered moving up to 77, but now they've got the day before weigh-ins, it makes it quite a bit easier to make that weight.
And I have nobody else. Well, I will say you have DeAndre's brother, Gab, also in. Yeah. So let's give him a shout out as well. So all the Corby love is not going DeAndre's way. His brother's very capable as well. But out of all them, do you have one that you would lean towards?
Just because I like him and I like watching him. There's a lot of guys that could do really well. I think Keith's a big favourite, but I'm gonna put DeAndre Corby in this one just because I really like watching him, and I think he's got the skill set to win the ADCC trials. So be looking out for him and wanting him to win, and I think he can win.
Did Keith avenge his loss to Dominic, Grapples Fest?
Oh yeah, completely slipped my mind actually. Yeah, he did. So Dominic, who beat Keith in the semi-finals of last trials, they had a recent rematch on Grapple Fest. I think that was the weekend, and there was like a million different things on, so I actually didn't get the chance to watch the full match, but Keith did avenge that loss in that match. Did you get a chance to watch the match at all, or?
No, I was also in that position of there being a million different things on that weekend, but I did see some highlights of it. And then I've seen Keith competing recently, and we flagged that he was on Polaris and beat Cammy Donnelly, who made it to the finals of the first Euro trials. So I think Keith's in great form. I think Keith's got the history of having success at trials, which we've said are probably like the most grueling jiu-jitsu event that you could take part in just now. I think his all-around game is really, really good. So I'm going to lean towards Keith Krikorian to come out on top in this one. Under 77, who are the runners and riders? Or probably just the runners, really. There's no, well, let's go. Who have we got?
So, guy that's made it to ADCC before, having a way harder time this time around qualifying than he usually does, Oliver Taza. So, Oliver's in that situation where he has dual citizenship. I believe it's maybe Egypt and Canada is his dual citizenship. But anyway, that affords him the ability to do 4 trials. So he gets to do the 2 European trials and the 2 North American trials. So it's been the case pretty much up until this time around that in Europe it would be like, okay, Taz is going to win the first trials and then we'll see who wins the next. That's what's happened the last few times. But Joseph managed to beat him in the finals the first trials, and then Tommy managed to beat him. Oh no, not Tommy. Davis, his teammate, managed to beat him this recent time around. So, and then Oliver didn't manage to win the first American trials as well. So this is Taz's last chance. He usually gets his place quite early on. So he's definitely one to look out for. He's won trials multiple times, whether in Europe or America, and he's competed at the World. So one to look out for. My personal favourite, I think, for this division is Andrew Tackett. Although there's a bit of an asterisk next to that he is coming off of an injury, so we'll see how that affects him. But if you look at the match where he picked up that injury that he managed to win, it was against PJ Barch, who we've spoken about earlier on this episode, who is really good and won 4th place at the last ADCC Worlds. I also think he's got that kind of like youth and energy to get through this grueling day. He got a really good style for winning trials as well. Good wrestling, scrappy scrambles, good passing. So he's my probably favourite for this division. Other names, Andy Varela, always good to see. He's made it pretty far in the trials before. John Combs has won trials before as well. Majid Hage is another one that has got the dual citizenship, so he gets to do multiple trials. Kieran Kachuk as well. Max Hansen's looked really good. So there's a lot of depth in this division. It's not stacked, but there's a lot of depth. So a lot of people to choose from. What about you?
Is that crossing the boundary into using the phrase, or is it not?
No, it's different.
It's not stacked. Rolando Samson, I believe, is one that you could also add to the list. I will say that was a bold guess as to where Oliver Taza might have citizenship. I don't know if it's correct. If anyone knows for certain, you can comment. You might be able to get one up over Calum in a Jitsu conversation, which doesn't always happen, but it's always a pleasurable experience when it does. I straight on it. Quite quietly, because it's going to come through the noise. I'll agree. Andrew Tackett was a back injury, which is a really difficult injury to deal with and get over. And we've not, I think, like, on past performance, I would also lean towards Andrew, but I'm going to be a lot more confident in my pick after the first day.
Yeah.
Or maybe even like after the first day and after his sleep that night, because you don't know how his back's going to react to the action. So, and it was interesting, and everything you were saying was a strength in Andrew. I think is also a strength in Andy Varela. I think Andrew's, maybe just a little bit ahead right now than Andy, but Andy is a big threat on the day. And I think he's made it to the finals before.
It's Willie.
Is
that who William beat? Yeah.
Good shout. So Andrew's brother William, who's going to be competing in the 88 division this time, beat Umbrella in the finals of the West Coast Trials last time around. So if you got that Oliver Taza citizenship situation wrong, you've redeemed yourself. And if you didn't, you've got 2 in a row. Well done. So, leaning towards Andrew, and then I think like I could see Andy Varela, sort of like not being everyone's top pick to come through, but I could see him coming through on the day. I think he's a real threat, and like a real his wrestling's really good. He's explosive. He's difficult to score on. He can hit submissions. I think he's one to watch. 88. We mentioned William. Who else have you got in that division?
Yeah, so we've got the guy that beat William at the last trials at 88, Elder Cruz. Super tough match for William. One, because William's coming up to 88 from 77, and then last time at the Worlds we saw Elder Cruz do under 99, so he's coming down. So obviously when you're going up to a weight class and then you're going up against someone that's cut down from a weight class 10 kilos or so heavier, that's physically a very hard thing to deal with. But like William spoke about on the podcast, he's working hard on his strength and conditioning, so hopefully he can close that gap a little bit with the physicality. But also a difficult match for him, just with Elder's wrestling ability. So he's definitely a big threat. Great skill set for trials as well. Another trials winner, Jay Rodriguez, had a match against William in the last one, but I think his foot already been injured from the Jacob Couch match was quite a big factor in that, so we might see another one with him as well. Jay versus Elder would be quite interesting. I think Elder's quite a bit more physical, Jay's maybe a bit faster, more scrappy, so that would be quite interesting to see. I think William, Jay and Elder are like the three kind of big names in that, but as well, Hunter Colvin, I believe, has made it to the finals before. Ryan Aikens looked really good in a lot of different competitions. He beat Jacob Couch just before the last trials. David Garmo, Chris Wojcik, there's some good names. Jason Rao as well, who we've kind of heard a lot that he's like amazing in the gym, just not quite been able to transfer that over to like the bigger competition. So we'll see if he can make a bigger impact on the day.
Calum, what do we need to mention at this point?
Like and subscribe.
To what?
The Jiu Jitsu Oracle.
To the interview that we did with whom?
Oh yeah, William Tackett. Yeah. So go check that out if you want to learn how to win trials. Good.
Yeah. So there's an interview with William Tackett that we did recently. If you've not listened to it, I recommend you do. Not just if you want to know how to win ADCC West Coast Trials, but if you have any interest in competition jiu-jitsu, either as a participant or a viewer, there is some excellent information in there. I think the fact that you highlighted that there's three people in this division who we think are just a bit above the rest of the competition, not to say that one of the other guys can't come through on the day, and I know William identified Ryan Aiken as being a real threat, but it'll be interesting to see how the draw works.
Yeah.
And who gets who at the semi-final stage if they make it through. Because trying to beat, if you're one of these guys and you have to beat two in a row, that's challenging.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder if William plays it differently against Elder this time around, having seen how Jacob Couch won the trials on the East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, I think William was more known as a leg walker a few years ago, and he's trying to transition to a bit more well-rounded and like wrestling and top game base. So yeah, that might be an adjustment if he feels like that's something he can expose with Elder, or maybe he's going to stick to his guns and try win the wrestling exchange with Elder. But we will find out soon.
Good. Under 99, who should we look out for?
I think Devontae Johnson is quite an interesting pick for this one. So he's had a lot of success in other really big competitions like Nogi World, Nogi Pans for the IBJJF scene. So super big, super well-rounded, super athletic. I think he is a big threat in this division, and looking forward to seeing him as well. Another guy that's got a good style for this division, Michael Pixley, obviously a really good wrestler, has made it quite far in the past. Anyone else jumping out for you?
Yeah, Kyle Bain.
Oh yeah.
Incredibly imposing physical specimen, but also really good leg locks.
Yeah.
And Michael Grandy made it to the finals of the East Coast Trials. So I watched a bit of him there and then haven't seen too much since. But the fact that he's done it before suggests that he might be able to do it again. I think athletically, Devontae is going to be very hard for people to deal with. So I'll probably lean towards him on the day. I think Pixley is an interesting one. If you can get through regulation, then I can't see many people taking him down. So if it ends up with guys standing on the feet I think he's going to have the edge over the vast majority of people in the division. I think Devontae's a good shout. I don't think we actually identified a firm favourite in the 88. Do you want to stick your neck on the line?
Let's go with our boy William.
Okay, let's go with our boy William. And over 99, I've only got one guy who I think it's his division to lose. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm presuming that's John Hansen.
John Hansen, yes.
Yeah. Found it quite interesting looking at this division on Smooth Comp, all the top names. Quite different compared to other divisions, to be expected somewhat, but like the ages of this division. So I think John is somewhere around 37, 38, and the age is kind of ranged from like late 20s, 28 or so, 27 up until 38, where other divisions you've got guys like Andrew Tackett who are looking to be the favourites, who are like either teenagers or still 20 years old. So I found that quite interesting in the division. But yeah, obviously John's won trials more than once, made it to ADCC, had some big wins, so I definitely think this is his division to lose.
As we've mentioned, the over 99 division, what do we have to flag up here?
Mark McQueen.
Mark McQueen, who won the second Euro trials to become the first Scotsman to go to the ADCC World Championships, and we interviewed him straight after the competition, so that's worth listening to. But I'm sure we'll have Mark, I hope, if he's generous enough to accept our invitation, we'll have him back on the podcast before he goes. But yeah, another chance to just give some recognition to Mark for what he achieved, and whoever makes it through this division could be up against Mark McQueen in the World Championships in August. Let's go through the three women's divisions where the winner will make it to the finals. So East Coast Trials, it was just an event on the day, see who comes out on top. West Coast Trials, the athletes have the chance to
punch there.
Oh, you can see that I'm trying to dance around the phrase, that the athletes have the chance to insert their name into the final draw. So, under 55, Calum, who are you looking out for?
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing Tammy Musumeci in this division. Similar to, like we spoke about earlier, cool seeing guys in the better bowl game in the no-gi, like Levi Jones-Leary, so always enjoy watching her. Jasmine Rocha as well, making it really far in the Brazilian trial, so she's going to get another shot in this trials as well. She looked really good. Alex Enriquez as well, has looked really good as well. So I think they're the top three guys in this division, although there is some other good names, including Angela Hill, I see in there as well, UFC fighter, so cool that she's throwing her hat in the mix. But I think the top three is Jasmine, Alex and Tammy.
Yeah. Any one of those three that you're leaning towards?
I think just given the skill set for the rules, I think she's a little bit bigger than some of the other ones on here as well. I'll go with Jasmine for this division.
Okay. I think Alex did really well at I think she won the East Coast. I think she's won Nogi Worlds as well. So she has a strong pedigree and is good wrestling and passing. So I'm gonna, if I had to pick one out of the three, I'd probably go her. Shout out Tammy Musumeci just for being able to compete at such a high level and have an extremely challenging professional career that's going along with it, not being a full-time grappling athlete. So, yeah, it would be great to see if she could go pretty far in the tournament and show that it's possible to, have other commitments in life and not just be a full-time athlete.
Reminds me of that, his name slips my mind, but there's that guy that literally every East is the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he wins every East Coast Trials under 99. I can't remember his name, but he's like got his own like law firm and everything, and like just trains jiu-jitsu on the side, which is pretty amazing. So that just popped into my head as well. But that is always cool to see people that don't just do jiu-jitsu doing really well.
Put it in the comments if you know who it is, please. Under 65.
Yeah, so Helena, obviously the biggest name in this division. She's popped off in the last few years. Made it really far in the past, but lost like in a kind of silly way that's quite easy to rectify, that I'm sure Danaher went over with her. I think she pulled guard when she shouldn't have, and then she lost off that one negative. So I think jiu-jitsu skill-wise, she's definitely got the capabilities to win this. She's shown more of her guard and leg locking in competition, but the guys at New Wave are always working on their wrestling and always working towards doing well in the ADCC rule set. So it'll be cool if we see that in her game a little bit more. In this one, Mo Black, another one who's done really well in these kind of events in the past as well. So those are the two top names for this division, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Mo against Helena.
Yeah.
When Helena got the penalty point.
Yeah.
So I would favour those two to meet again in the final. And I think Helena has more of a finishing threat. So if she can get anywhere near submissions, I think she's or anywhere near a position that can lead to a submission, she's going to be favoured to win. But Mo's going to be a tough nut to crack. I think it comes down to those two. I'm probably going to lean to Helena this time around.
Yeah.
And over 65. So again, we're heading up to the biggest weight class. So in the male side, we said it's probably for one person. I don't want to be like phrase it in a way that it's for this person to lose, because it's a bit unfair on the athlete. Assuming that they listen to this, why wouldn't they? But I think again, like in the heaviest weight class on the other side with the women, I think there's one contender who stands above the others, and I'd be surprised if they didn't come out on top. Who am I talking about, Calum?
Wait, for the over 65 woman.
Yes.
Yeah, Amanda Levy.
Yes.
Yeah, so she's the only name that sticks out for me in this division. I'm not super familiar with a lot of the other ones, but she is super high level, has some good wins over the likes of Rafaela Guedes, Gabriela Garcia and others, so I think she can definitely do well in this.
Yeah, I think she's got submission threat. She's also got MMA experience, which when you add that to your game, you become very durable and gritty, and I think like that's a real benefit when you're in an environment like the trials.
Yeah, good at competing as well, because at the end of the day, it's surely not that big of a deal when you've done MMA, done some jiu-jitsu competitions.
All right, so we'll watch the West Coast Trials this weekend, and then we'll be back very quickly thereafter with our thoughts on how it all played out. We'll let you know whether our picks were right or wrong, and hopefully we'll continue the narrative as to who is the most dominant grappler in the world, who are the best brothers. We might get the Tackets inserting themselves into that discussion. Even young Caleb, I believe, will be in the 66 division. So, we might have a 3-on-3 with the Tackets and the Benizes down the line. Who knows? But for now, get ready for West Coast Trials. Make your picks. Maybe we've helped you along the way by highlighting some favourites for the divisions. And there's no better way to end it than just saying bye for now. So bye for now.